Every 10 opportunities, you should have 4 to 5 sales, or a closing ratio of 40 to 50%. Each one of those numbers tells you a little bit something about the effectiveness of that salesperson. Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to continue our conversation on the things that you need to know to be an effective sales manager. In the last video, we talked about your purpose as a sales manager. In today's videos, we're going to talk about the people that you are responsible for, meaning your salespeople. First of all, you have probably inherited a group of salespeople that you are now responsible for. How do you make sure that you manage these people so they can be as effective as possible for you to get the amount of sales you need to be able to achieve your goals? The easiest way to do this is by looking at numbers. Numbers don't lie. You want to deal with facts, not feelings. That, oh, this is a good person or this is a great salesperson, versus what are their actual production numbers. So some of the key metrics that you want to look at when you're dealing with your salespeople is how many customers are they seeing on a typical day or a typical week. You want to be able to track those numbers. And then as a result of those opportunities, how many people are they actually selling? So for example, if you have 2 salespeople, let's say you have Jean-Luc and he is seeing about 10 customers every week. And by the end of the week, he is selling about 4 cars. So that means he's got a closing ratio of about 40%. Then you've got Jordy. Jordy also sees about 10 customers, but he unfortunately only sells about 2 cars every week. So does that give you some indication of who might be a better salesperson or who might need some extra training or help? Just in that little piece of data, it gives you an idea of who you may want to spend some time with. So it's very, very important that you identify numbers that are important in the sales process. What I think are important metrics that you need to understand is the number of customers or opportunities every salesperson is seeing within a given time frame. Of those people, how many are actually getting to various points in the sales cycle? So how many people are actually going on a test drive? How many people are actually going to a worksheet and getting numbers? And then ultimately, how many people are going all the way to closing a deal? Each one of those numbers tells you a little bit something about the effectiveness of that salesperson. So let's say, for example, let's talk with Jean-Luc again. He's seen 10 customers this week. Out of those 10 customers, he was able to get 9 out of the 10 to go on a test drive. So he's got a 90% test drive ratio. That's great. You know, that's probably where you want them to be, because remember, when you're selling a vehicle, there's the emotional part of it and there's the logical side of it. The emotional part of it happens when you go on the test drive. That's when people fall in love with the vehicle. That's when they start to see themselves owning that vehicle. And that's the part that we need to get them excited about, so that when you come back to talk about the numbers, they are super excited about, how do I make this work, because I want that car. So you need to have a fairly high ratio of demos to opportunities that you're seeing. In my mind, anything north of 85% is what we're shooting for. If you're less than that, then there's probably some work to do. The second step of that is, now that the person has gone for the demo drive and they've come back to the store, the next logical question in their mind should be, okay, how much? I've gone on this test drive and I really, really like the vehicle. Now, how much is it going to cost me to own this car? So that should be the next step. So therefore, it should be a fairly easy transition for the salesperson to go from the demo drive to the numbers. If you see a drop off in the amount of test drives versus worksheets, so he's gone on 9 test drives, we should have 9 people going to worksheet. If that ends up becoming, for example, 2, that's a problem, because something has happened between the time the test drive happened and the time that customer left the store. They probably said, oh, thanks very much, I really enjoyed the drive, we'll get back to you. Well, no, that's not how things should go. We have to go from test drive to the worksheet so we can actually present to them how they can own that vehicle. The only time they shouldn't go to the worksheet is if we've made an error in determining that that was the incorrect vehicle for that customer. Then we need to go back to the needs analysis and represent a vehicle, because maybe we have them on the wrong car. But if we found them the exact right car, they loved the test drive, the next step should be the worksheet. Then after that should be, how do we close this deal? So we had 10 opportunities that week. 9 of them went on a demo drive, 9 of them we got to numbers, and then out of that we would expect at least half of them to end up purchasing the vehicle. So somewhere around 4 to 5 should end up in a sale. And that's the kind of metrics you should be looking at with your salespeople. For every 10 opportunities, you should have 4 to 5 sales, or a closing ratio of 40 to 50%. So let's just really quickly recap. Demo ratio, 85 to 90%. Worksheet ratio, also 85 to 90%. Overall closing ratio, 40 to 50%. Those should be kind of the benchmark numbers that you're dealing with. Now, if you don't get there, we're going to talk in further videos about how we train your salespeople to get to those metrics. But I wanted you to know that these are some of the things that you need to have in place so you can have an effective sales team. These are from the people that you've inherited becoming a sales manager. What about hiring? You're also going to be responsible for hiring salespeople throughout your career as a sales manager. How do we do this? How do we do this effectively? Do we put an ad in the paper looking for salespeople from other stores? Do we do it a different way? In my experience, what I found is that it's very, very hard to find salespeople who are working at different stores and bring them over. Well, let's look at it this way. If you're a top producing salesperson, why would you want to leave your store? Most of the people who are leaving their store are the people who are struggling. So when you put in an ad looking for salespeople and you get people from other stores, those are typically the bottom of the barrel type of salespeople that you're going to be interviewing, and you're trying to find the best of them. In my mind, that's not necessarily the best way to do things. What I found is that a great source of great talent for sales is if you look in a retail sales industry, but outside of the automotive industry. So people who sell cell phones, electronics, furniture, maybe even retail clothing sales. If you can find people in those areas, they understand sales culture and they have no preconceptions about what is required to sell a vehicle. You can then bring them in, train them the way you want them to sell based on your processes. And I found that those are the type of people that, number one, will listen, are coachable, and will tend to do better for you and stick with you in the long run. So that's my one tip of the day, is to hire not from the automotive industry, but look for people who have previous retail sales experience. So we'll leave it at that for now, and join me in the next session where we're going to talk about different processes that you need to implement to make sure that you have an effective sales team. Thanks. Talk soon.